Subscribe to the channel right now, hit that like button, and comment your thoughts below. Pay close attention. Have you ever thought that a single, simple action could destroy your entire life? If so, this story will make you reflect deeply. Do you believe in karma? Julian Blackwood never carried bags. Not by chance, not ever. But on that particular morning, under the cold and brilliant lights of the JFK International Airport, he was holding the delicate designer handbag belonging to Sienna, casually hung over his arm. To him, it was a harmless gesture, one of convenience, not devotion. But every step he took across the polished marble floor echoed differently. Sienna walked beside him, slender and effortless. Her cream-colored dress moved softly as she adjusted her sunglasses. Her smile was small, private, the kind of smile a mistress wears when she believes she has finally won. He didn't look at her. He didn't have to. His grip on the bag was answer enough. The luxury terminal buzzed around them. Executives rushed past, impeccably dressed staff checked passports, and the lounge music faded into the distant announcements of flights. A private jet was waiting for them, but Sienna insisted on walking through the departures area. She wanted to be seen with him. Julian didn't object. Why would he? For once, he felt he had control of his own story, until suddenly, he didn't. It happened in seconds. If this story resonates with you, subscribe to the channel, like this video, and spread the word. Comment below telling us where you are watching from. First, the silence. Then, the weight of the stillness. When strangers stopped moving, conversations were cut in half. Phones were raised, not for calls, but for cameras. Julian followed their gaze instinctively. His heartbeat slowed down. At the other end of the terminal, standing strangely motionless in the middle of the chaos, was Elena, his wife. She wore no makeup. Her face was pale with exhaustion. Her eyes were darker than he remembered. But what Julian saw in the end wasn't just her face. It was the 4 small children grouped around her. 4 identical children, each clutching her skirt tightly, their matching little coats looking like ghosts against the polished floor. His quadruplets, Julian's children. His hand opened by reflex. Sienna's bag slipped from his fingers, hitting the floor with a sound much louder than its weight justified. His mouth moved but produced no words. Sweat pricked under his expensive suit. Time fractured. Elena didn't move, didn't speak. She just looked through him, not at him. Her expression wasn't of anger. It was worse. It was pity. The first camera flash caught him, then another. And another. The passengers who once envied Julian were now recording his fall. Frame by frame, in high definition. "Julian," Sienna whispered, her voice cracking. He didn't hear her. His feet wouldn't move. His mind spun, uselessly replaying conversations, excuses, plans. Nothing fit in this moment. No contingency prepared him to see Elena there with the proof of his abandonment, clutching her trembling hands. The children looked at him, confused. One of the little ones pointed a chubby finger, pulling at Elena's sleeve. "Daddy?" Elena flinched. Julian's stomach churned violently. The people were whispering now. Phones tilted to get better shots. The whispers turned into murmurs, then into audible questions. Is that his wife? Are those his kids? Who is the woman with him? Sienna stepped back as if physical distance could erase her implication. She looked from Elena to Julian, and back to Elena, her lips trembling. She realized too late what everyone else had already understood. She wasn't the woman Julian belonged to. She was the evidence of his betrayal. Elena. His voice cracked like that of a man who doesn't know himself. She finally moved. Slow and deliberate steps toward him, not to shorten the distance, but to wound him with every inch of her composure. The children followed her, their steps uneven, unsure. Julian's heart pounded against his ribs. Desperate. Useless. Elena stopped just before him. Her voice was almost a whisper, but every syllable cut him. Is this what you carried her bag for? She didn't wait for his answer. She didn't need it. She turned toward her children, crouched down, lifting the smallest boy into her arms as if to protect him. And then she walked away, passing him, passing Sienna, passing the reporters gathering at the entrance. Julian watched her go, unable to follow. And somewhere in the crowd, a journalist's voice pierced the silence. Julian Blackwood, can you explain this? But he couldn't, because how do you explain carrying the wrong woman's bag when your real life just walked past you holding your legacy? The flashes continued, but Julian didn't see them anymore. Not even when the first tears finally fell, Julian didn't move. Not when Elena passed him. Not when the flashes became blinding. Not when someone shouted his name over the terminal speakers. It wasn't until the first reporter approached, shoving a microphone in his face, that he blinked. Julian Blackwood, are those your children? Who is the woman with you? Is your marriage over? He opened his mouth, but his throat was rough, strangled by panic. His eyes desperately searched for Elena, but she was steps ahead, carrying one of the children and guiding the others. Their little faces confused and tired. Elena, wait! His voice cracked. She didn't wait. Instead, she stopped halfway, turned deliberately, and faced the sea of cameras. Her voice was calm, steady, unshakable. I am Elena Blackwood, she said softly, but the silence was dense enough for her words to resonate. And these are Julian's forgotten children. The phrase detonated. For the press, for the strangers, for Julian himself. Gasps. Endless shutter clicks. Even the automated airport announcements seemed to pause, as if the building itself struggled to listen. Julian's heart beat against his ribs. Elena, don't do it! He tried to move forward, but security, alerted by the churning crowd, stepped between them. Julian's hand reached out toward her, imploring, desperate, but caught only empty air. His wife looked him directly in the eyes. Then she diverted her gaze to the bodyguards ready at her side. Please, escort me and my children. Get us out. She didn't shout. She didn't beg. She commanded. The guards hesitated, only a moment before obeying, recognizing not the billionaire, but the woman whose pain demanded respect. Elena, let me explain. His voice was hoarse, hollow. She approached one more time, stopping just out of his reach. The children clung to her dress. Julian barely breathed. Then she leaned in, her lips close to his ear, her voice barely audible under the roar of camera shutters. They will remember the man who never picked them up, she whispered, not the one who carried her bag. And then she pulled back. Julian stumbled. Elena! But she was gone. Security flanked her, protecting her from the chaos as they pushed through the crowd. The small figures of the children disappeared into the crowd, swallowed by flashing lights and raised phones. Julian's mind screamed, but his body remained paralyzed. Around him, the questions kept coming, louder, hungrier. Mr. Blackwood, do you deny paternity? Is your company at risk? Is that your mistress? That last question shook him. He turned sharply, frantically searching for Sienna, but the place where she had been just minutes ago was empty. No cream dress, no trembling hands, no presence. She was gone, vanished into the confusion she had left him with. Julian looked down, disoriented. Her designer bag lay forgotten at his feet. The absurdity of the situation twisted something deep inside him. The cameras, the noise, the betrayal, now public, irreversible. And in that moment, he realized what the world saw now. A billionaire alone in the airport terminal, surrounded by questions. No wife, no children, just the burden of a bag he should never have carried. If you were in Julian's situation, what would you do next? Would you try to get your family back or run from the shame? The terminal announcement echoed cruelly. Flight 274, boarding. Julian Blackwood stood motionless while the world watched his collapse. Sienna closed the bathroom door and slid down against the cold wall, her knees shaking. The noise of the terminal outside was muffled, but her heart beat louder than any sound. She looked at the small, cracked mirror above the sink. Her mascara was smeared, her cheeks flushed. But it wasn't exhaustion or fear that scared her now. It was recognition. Who am I to him? Her breathing was short and ragged. Minutes ago, she had been standing next to Julian Blackwood, the billionaire she once believed was her future. Now she was alone, gripping her arms, shivering despite the heat. Somewhere in that terminal, his wife had his children. The children whose existence Sienna hadn't even known about. Her mind relived everything fragment by fragment. Julian carrying her bag, the camera flashes, and then Elena's face. Calm, powerful, the kind of woman Sienna once envied. Now she feared her. She hid her face in her hands, but memories invaded without mercy. Julian's penthouse, the first night she stayed. The city lights shining through the glass walls. He poured wine, looking at her with eyes she mistook for tenderness. She doesn't understand me, Sienna, he whispered. You do. Sienna, 24 years old and desperately in love, believed him. He touched her cheek, slow and deliberate. I'm trapped in that marriage. With you, I can breathe, Heath. She remembered the exact words, the way he said them, the way they felt like the truth. Now she heard them differently. Another memory, her first modeling job canceled after Julian saw the photos. You don't need those anymore, he told her. Let me take care of you. She smiled, believing that was love. In the bathroom, Sienna closed her eyes, hating herself for the memory. How long had she been a replacement? A simple object? Had she been his rebellion against Elena or his insurance policy? The worst thought of all crept in, cold and slow. Maybe I never was anything. Tears blurred her vision as her fingers dug into her skin. She thought of Julian's promises, how he spoke of Elena as if she were ice, controlling, distant. But the woman she saw today wasn't cold. She was strong. And Julian, he had looked smaller than she had ever seen him. A sound made Sienna jump. A knock on the bathroom door. Her whole body flinched. Miss, are you okay? A cleaner's voice. Sienna's voice cracked when she answered. I just need a minute. The footsteps faded. She breathed again, but her pulse raced. Now what? She had no answer. Julian wouldn't protect her. Not anymore. He hadn't even looked for her in the chaos. Not after Elena appeared. Because the moment his wife arrived, she ceased to exist. Her gaze drifted to her phone. Dozens of messages. Friends, strangers, reporters. Her name was trending. Her photos leaked. The headline screamed. Identified. Julian Blackwood's mistress. It was no longer a secret. It was the scandal. Suddenly, the walls felt suffocating. She stumbled to the sink. She splashed her face with cold water, hoping it would numb the burning shame. But water couldn't clean what she felt. A tool. That was all she had been. A pawn in Julian Blackwood's war against a woman he never really knew. A war she never agreed to fight. Her phone buzzed again. Another notification. Another headline. She dropped it, letting it crash to the floor. When she finally looked back at the mirror, she saw it. The end of the illusion. No glamour. No future. Nothing. Just Sienna and her mistake. A single thought echoed in her mind. I have to get out. Not just of this bathroom, of the city, of the story, of him. She picked up her phone with trembling hands and opened her last rideshare app. A destination came to mind, a place where he would never look for her. The hideout wasn't much. Bare walls, blackout curtains, 2 bedrooms. Security cameras covered every exterior angle. To Elena Blackwood, it was more. It was more of a home than the mansion she once shared with Julian. She sat on the edge of a simple leather sofa, back straight. The Quadruplets slept in the next room. Her lawyer, Charlotte Reese, sat opposite her, silent, waiting. Elena didn't speak immediately. She watched the steam rising from her untouched tea. Finally, she asked without looking up, "Do you think I'm weak, Charlotte?" Charlotte hesitated. "No, Elena." Elena's lips tightened. "Julian does." A pause. Then, Elena began. "At first, it wasn't obvious. He made me feel lucky, special. I even believed him when he said no one else understood his world. One night he brought me roses, and the next he silenced me." Charlotte listened, her tablet idle in her lap. "When I got pregnant, everything changed. He said it was too soon. He said the timing would damage his image. I wasn't allowed to go to events, no baby showers, no public photos. I carried our children in silence while he went on with his empire." Her voice didn't break. She was too numb for that. "I found out about the first mistress when I was 6 months pregnant. Not Sienna, someone before her. When I confronted him, he said I had misunderstood. He made me think I was paranoid, hormonal. He locked my accounts after that argument." Charlotte's jaw tightened. She had heard stories like this before, but Elena's containment unsettled her more than tears would have. "The twins were born premature. Emergency C-section. I was unconscious. When I woke up, Julian wasn't there." Elena's hands clenched into fists in her lap. "I asked the nurse why he wasn't holding them. She told me he never came." A long silence. Charlotte's throat tightened. "Not a single time?" Elena slowly shook her head. "Not a single time." She turned her eyes to Charlotte for the first time. "The world thinks he is a distant father. Cold, maybe. But they don't know the truth." Charlotte's voice softened. "Tell me." Elena inhaled carefully. "He didn't hold his children because he didn't care if they lived." Charlotte blinked. Elena continued. "I heard him tell the doctor once. He said if they didn't make it, it would be less complicated." She let the horror settle. "I let him take everything, Charlotte. My name, my home, my money, and worst of all, my silence." Charlotte leaned forward, her voice steady now. "But not anymore." "No," Elena nodded. "Not anymore." The tea had gone cold. Charlotte leaned in with sharp eyes. "You have to decide now. Do we settle quietly, or do we burn him publicly?" Elena answered without hesitation. "I want the world to know what he did, what he never did." Charlotte nodded once. "Then tomorrow we file the lawsuit." Elena's gaze drifted to the closed bedroom door, where her children slept peacefully for once. "People think this is about money. It's not." Charlotte's voice softened. "What is it about?" "History." Charlotte frowned slightly. Elena's tone was bitter, definitive. "I won't let my children grow up thinking that silence is strength." Charlotte understood. So, Julian Blackwood's empire wasn't Elena's target. His legacy was. Charlotte stood up. "I'll prepare the statements." But Elena wasn't finished. She picked up her phone and opened a gallery. Dozens of photos, not posed, not public, quiet moments of 4 little children growing up. Charlotte watched as Elena scrolled through them in silence. Finally, Elena whispered, more to herself than anyone else, "He never looked at them." Charlotte said nothing. Outside, the security lights flickered. Silence settled over the refuge once more. But it wasn't security Elena felt. It was the calm before the war. The next morning, The world had chosen sides. Elena Blackwood's name was trending in headlines on 5 continents. News anchors debated endlessly over grainy airport images and speculated about the mysterious quadruplets clinging to her skirt. Commentators dissected her silence, her expression, her face without makeup. Was she a cold and calculating woman planning her revenge, or a betrayed and broken wife? It depended on which channel you watched. At the Blackwood headquarters, Julian's PR team acted quickly. A carefully worded statement leaked within hours. Mr. Blackwood deeply regrets the emotional pain caused by private matters that have been made public. He remains committed to his role as a father and requests privacy for his children. The headline spun, "A misunderstood father." Julian liked that phrase. Behind the glass walls of his penthouse office, Julian paced like a caged animal, reviewing draft after draft of his next speech. His personal assistant hovered nervously nearby. "Control the narrative," he murmured. "That's all that matters." But no script could reverse what had happened. Somewhere deep inside, Julian knew he had carried the wrong bag. And now the media was taking care of the story. On the other side of the city, Sienna watched the same headlines. Her name, her photos, her career destroyed. It had taken the press less than 12 hours to find her modeling profiles, her old Instagram photos, her interviews on women's empowerment. Now every image had a new caption: "The mistress who destroyed a billionaire's marriage." Online comments filled her inbox. "Gold digger, home wrecker." She turned off her phone, but the silence didn't help. Sienna sat curled on the floor of a borrowed apartment, knees pressed to her chest, mascara running from crying, blinds closed to shield from daylight. Julian hadn't called. She hated herself for expecting him to. On TV, analysts speculated about her role in the scandal, as if her life were a subplot in Julian's fall. A commentator laughed cruelly. "She thought she was special. That's what mistresses always think." Sienna closed her eyes. Maybe he was right. On the other side of the city, in the quiet of her refuge, Elena sat watching the same coverage. But where Sienna cried, Elena just watched in silence. Her expression was illegible. Every insult directed at her didn't hurt her. Every accusation of being cold only confirmed what she had been taught: that a woman who doesn't cry is dangerous, that a woman who speaks is ungrateful. Julian had taught her well, but now the world could watch, and Elena intended to let them. Back in his penthouse, Julian rehearsed. "This is a misunderstanding. My wife and I have differences. Yes, but..." He stopped, frustrated. The assistant waited, then hesitated. "Sir, with all due respect, people might not believe you." Julian turned slowly with sharp eyes. "I built the skyline of this city." His assistant said nothing. Julian's phone rang. He checked it, expecting support. Instead, the text from his legal advisor froze him. "She hired Charlotte Reese." Julian's hand tightened around the phone. Reese wasn't a divorce lawyer. She was a war strategist. His mouth went dry. Julian looked out the window at the city that once belonged to him, realizing he was no longer writing the script. Elena was, and she was in no hurry. Through the world's screens, her silence spoke louder than Julian's carefully crafted words. The media wasn't covering a scandal. They were witnessing a public execution. Julian Blackwood simply didn't know if he was the victim or the criminal. Sienna waited in silence. The hotel suite was too perfect. Beige walls, gold accents, sterile luxury, like the life she once dreamed of. Now she sat on the edge of a velvet chair, twisting her trembling fingers. Every second dragged. She almost ran when the door clicked open. Elena walked in without security, without a lawyer. Just her, calm, controlled, terrifying. She closed the door softly behind her, The click was louder than Sienna's heartbeats. Neither woman spoke. Sienna stood up too quickly. Her voice cracked. I'm sorry. I didn't know." Elena raised a single hand. Sienna fell silent. Elena crossed the room with careful and deliberate steps. She didn't sit. She stood in front of Sienna. Her gaze was steady. "I know why you called me." Sienna swallowed hard. "I need to know if it was all a lie." Elena tilted her head slightly. "Do you want me to tell you the truth about Julian?" Sienna nodded. Elena's voice was calm. Too calm. "Fine." She didn't pace. She didn't give a sermon. She simply told the story. "I met him when I was your age, 24. He said I was different, special, the only one who saw the man behind the empire." Sienna's lips parted. Horror took over her, but Elena's tone never changed. "He told me his exes didn't understand him, that he felt trapped, that I was his freedom." Sienna's tears began to flow. I believed him. Her eyes flickered then briefly, a flash of something raw. "I spent my first pregnancy alone in a mansion, without access to my own accounts, with staff instructed not to speak to me unless necessary." Sienna's throat tightened. "I thought you were the problem." "I know," said Elena softly. A pause. "Do you know what Julian said when I asked him why he never came to the hospital?" Sienna shook her head, tears starting. Elena's voice was pure steel. "He said, 'They will survive without me.'" Sienna's tears spilled over. Elena leaned slightly forward. "And that was when I realized something." Sienna looked up. "Broken." Elena pronounced the sentence with surgical precision. "You are not my enemy." Sienna blinked. "You are the next version of me." The silence shattered Sienna. She sobbed uncontrollably. Shame and pain flooded her all at once. She shook her head, gasping. "I didn't know! I didn't know!" Elena watched. Not cruel, not with sympathy. Simply finished. "I believe you." That somehow hurt Sienna more. Elena finally sat down. Her posture remained impeccable. "You weren't the first, and you won't be the last." "I loved him." Sienna's voice cracked like glass. "Me too." Sienna covered her face with her hands. Elena let the silence extend, giving Sienna the breakdown Julian never allowed her. Then Elena's tone changed. Practical. Sharp. "You need to decide now." Sienna looked up broken. "Decide what?" Elena's gaze was ice. "Are you going to keep begging for the scraps of his attention?" Sienna said nothing. "Or will you disappear before he destroys what is left of you?" It wasn't advice. It was a warning. Elena stood up. Sienna whispered through tears. "Why did you come?" Elena's expression finally cracked. A flash of something maternal. "I came so you don't make my mistake." She walked to the door with her hand on the knob. She hesitated. Then, without turning, Elena spoke softly. "When he calls you, and he will, don't answer." The door opened. Elena paused. Then she said the last words Sienna would hear from her. "He only calls when he needs to win." And then she left. Sienna sat alone, sobbing in a luxury hotel suite she no longer believed in, mourning a future that never existed. But somewhere deep inside her, a new thought began to take root. Escape. And maybe revenge. Julian Blackwood sat behind his glass desk. Skyscrapers reflected in the floor-to-ceiling windows behind him. The city pulsed with light, but inside his office, silence reigned. A war room. Papers lined the table. Financial projections, public sentiment reports, crisis management strategies. None mentioned his children. Opposite him, his assistant hovered nervously, clutching a digital tablet. "Sir, 3 major shareholders pulled out this morning. The board is nervous." Julian didn't look up. "They will come back." The assistant hesitated. "Sir, Elena's interview is scheduled for next week." Julian's jaw tightened once. Then he returned to the spreadsheets. "Cancel the press conference." "But," I said, "cancel it." He didn't explain. He didn't need to. To Julian, words were now liabilities. Only numbers mattered, and the numbers were bleeding. His empire needed stability. Family didn't matter. He scanned the projections. His mind was cold and ruthless. What mattered wasn't Elena's voice or Sienna's tears. It wasn't public indignation or sympathy. Sentiment changed. Wealth endured. If he controlled the market, he controlled the narrative. He always had. But for the first time, doubt whispered. Julian pushed it away. "Send an offer to the Reese firm," he said flatly. "A settlement, money, property, whatever she wants." "In exchange for Elena's silence?" "Yes." The assistant nodded cautiously, though both knew Reese wouldn't settle. Julian returned to his screens unconcerned. To him, Elena wasn't a wife. She was a cost center, and the children. He had never seen them as real. 4 identical faces he had avoided from the moment they were born. Babies were complications. Emotions slowed business. Attachment weakened resolve. Julian didn't hold children. He held power. But cracks were forming. That night, long after the assistant had left, Julian remained in the office. Dim lights. The city stretched beyond the glass like a dead circuit board. He poured a drink he didn't touch. His gaze drifted to the single object at the end of his desk. The photo. A cheap photograph issued by the hospital taken by a nurse. 4 premature babies. His sons. He didn't know who had put the photo there. Maybe Elena. Maybe a staff member long gone. He had ignored it for years, leaving it on the desk as background noise. But now he just stared at it. Not with affection, not with regret, with confusion. It meant nothing to him. Not because he was cruel, but because he didn't know how. Julian Blackwood understood transactions, not fatherhood. The silence oppressed him. Finally, he stood up, walked to the window, looked at the streets where cars and people seemed equally insignificant. In the glass reflection, his own face stared back. For the first time, he didn't recognize it. His empire was crumbling, his narrative fading, and he didn't know how to win this war. Behind him, the untouched drink warmed. Beside him, the photo remained. 4 children and a man who never held them. Julian whispered to no one, "They will forget me." And somewhere in the city, Elena prepared to ensure that was exactly what happened. Sienna stopped counting the hours. Time no longer mattered. Her hotel suite, once her escape, had become her prison. The curtains remained closed. Food trays rotted untouched. Her phone lay beside her, the screen cracked, still buzzing with messages she no longer read. "You ruined a family. You deserve to die." She almost believed them. Her modeling contracts had vanished overnight. The brands she once flaunted in interviews had cut ties, citing values in statements that trended worldwide. Friends didn't write. No one called. Except Julian. But she never answered, not since Elena's words. When he calls, and he will, don't answer. Now, the silence of her phone was louder than his calls. Sienna stood barefoot on the cold tile floor, looking at the balcony door. She opened it slowly. The wind hit her like an accusation. Below, the city bustled strange cars. Life went on without her. 25 floors above it all. Sienna took a step forward. Barefoot, her sheer dress clinging to her skin. Her eyes were swollen from crying. The railing felt cold under her trembling hands. One step. That was all it would take. Julian wouldn't care. Elena would understand. Maybe this was the only ending left for her. Her fingers tightened on the railing. Tears flowed silently. Then, 3 knocks. Sienna froze. A knock on the door. She turned confused, disoriented. Her heart beat louder than reason. "Julian?" she whispered. No answer. She took slow and hesitant steps back inside. She reached the door, looked through the peephole. A woman was there. No, not Elena. Someone else. Sienna hesitated. Then she opened the door. The woman said nothing, simply handed Sienna an envelope and left. Sienna's trembling fingers opened it. Inside a folded note. Short, precise. Room 120, top floor. Go now. Sienna's breath accelerated. The handwriting wasn't Julian's. It was Elena's. She stood paralyzed for a moment. Her mind raced between fear and disbelief. Then instinct took over. She grabbed her phone, her wallet. Nothing else. She left the suite without looking back. Her bare feet walked down the hall, leading her away from the balcony. Away from the edge, away from herself. Room 120. She knocked. No answer. A soft click. The door opened. A silent man was inside. Tall, expressionless, dressed in black. Sienna's voice cracked. Elena! The man stepped aside, inviting her silently. Sienna hesitated. Then she crossed the threshold. The door closed behind her, and for the first time in days, she allowed herself to collapse. Not in death, but in rescue. The courtroom was colder than Elena expected. She sat next to Charlotte Reese, hands steady, expression illegible. The press filled every available seat beyond the glass barrier. Cameras were not allowed inside, but the world was still watching. Julian sat opposite her. He looked smaller now, not physically. The power had abandoned him. Elena didn't look at him. She didn't need to. Mrs. Blackwood, would you like to speak? Asked the judge. Elena stood up, her black tailored dress impeccable, her posture imperturbable. When she spoke, her voice made itself heard. I am not here for money. Silence. She let the words settle. I am here for my children. Julian moved. Elena continued. I am requesting sole custody of my 4 children and full control of the Blackwood family trust assigned to them. A murmur ran through the gallery. Charlotte remained motionless beside her. Silent strength. Elena's voice tightened. Steel wrapped in silk. For years, Mr. Blackwood ensured I remained legally and financially dependent. He controlled every dollar, every decision. When I was pregnant, he isolated me, denied me access to medical options, and refused to appear at their birth. She paused, let the silence cut. He has never held them. Gasps. Even the judge's eyes flickered. Elena continued. I have documented proof of his financial strangulation, copies of bank records, surveillance footage showing his absence during medical emergencies, and statements signed by staff confirming his refusal to acknowledge the existence of his children. Julian said nothing. Elena turned completely to the judge. I am not asking for justice. A pause. I am taking it. She sat down. The judge's expression tightened. Charlotte whispered softly beside her. You won. But Elena didn't smile. On the other side of the room, Julian's lawyer stood up attempting damage control. Legal jargon. Corporate interests. Terms like miscommunication. Complex family structures. Violation of privacy. Julian never spoke. He stayed frozen. Silent, but powerless. By mid-afternoon, the ruling was quick. Full custody granted to Elena Blackwood. Control of the trust. Hundreds of millions transferred to her authority. Julian retained visitation rights. Elena's eyes remained blank when she heard that. She knew he wouldn't use them. When the judge's gavel finally fell, Charlotte touched her arm gently. It's done. Elena stood up. Julian remained seated. For the first time, Elena allowed herself to look at him. Not with hatred, not with fear, with nothing. And that void broke him more than anger. The courtroom doors opened. Reporters crowded outside, waiting for statements. Charlotte asked softly, "Do you want to say something to the press?" Elena answered without hesitation. "No." She walked out into the sunlight. Cameras flashed. People shouted questions, but she didn't speak, simply walked. And the world watched. Not Julian, not the billionaire, not the victim, but Elena Blackwood, a woman no longer silent, a symbol of silent strength. Back inside, Julian finally stood up. His lawyer said something. Julian didn't listen. He walked toward the courtroom exit alone. No camera chased him. Outside, the headlines exploded. Elena Blackwood wins. Julian loses everything. Back in his penthouse, Julian poured a drink, but didn't drink. He looked at the news reports until the glass slipped from his hand and shattered. The empire he had built was burning, not for a scandal, for a woman who refused to remain invisible. In that moment, Julian Blackwood understood. He was no longer the story. Elena was. Julian Blackwood lived in silence now. His villa, situated on a private cliff, looked at the ocean in which he no longer swam. The glass walls let in the sunlight he never noticed. The staff came and went without words. Meals remained untouched. Power had never felt so empty. Every morning he sat in the same leather chair in front of the huge TV screen. News reports played in endless loops, not about his company, not about him, about her. Elena Blackwood, public appearances, charity launches, child health initiatives. Every headline carried her name. Every photograph showed her with 4 children, his sons. Julian watched as their faces grew older in each new broadcast, but he didn't recognize them because he had never tried. At night, when the staff assumed he slept, Julian sat alone, rewinding the video of Elena's declaration in court. He has never held them. The words tormented him more than any scandal. In his mind, he repeated a question that never found an answer. Why didn't I? Now no phone calls arrived nor invitations. His name was a currency no one wanted. Powerless, loveless, forgotten. That was the price, and he paid it alone. On the other side of the city, a different world unfolded. A small and quiet park, simple swings, faded benches, the hum of ordinary life. Elena sat on a worn wooden bench, watching her children play. Their laughter wasn't loud, just real. 4 children ran on the grass, identical, but distinct in energy. One climbed, one spun in circles. 2 argued over a toy. Elena observed in silence. Charlotte had asked why she came here to this ordinary park. Elena never answered. This park felt honest. A place without cameras, without narratives, without Julian. She closed her eyes briefly, breathing in freedom. Then she felt it. The presence. When she opened her eyes, Sienna was on the other side of the path. Time slowed down. Neither woman moved. Sienna's hair was shorter. Now her eyes lighter. She wore no makeup or heels, just simple clothes. She blended with the world for the first time. They said nothing, but their eyes met, and that was enough. A look charged with shared history, pain, betrayal, survival. 2 women, 2 lives ruined by the same man. 2 lives rebuilt. Without him, a child's laughter broke the silence between them. Sienna's lips trembled, not from sadness, from relief. She made a small and respectful movement with her head, and then turned, walking away in silence, disappearing down the path toward a future she could finally claim as her own. Elena watched until Sienna left. She didn't chase her, didn't speak. She simply turned toward her children. She didn't need to look over her shoulder. Some wars don't need winners, only endings. Back at the villa, Julian's drink remained untouched. The sun set beyond the ocean, bleeding red on the horizon. Julian pressed play again. The same clip. Elena's voice. "I am not asking for justice, I am taking it." While the screen flickered in the gloom, Julian whispered to the empty room. "I could have fixed it." No one answered, because no one listened. Julian Blackwood, once the man who owned the city, now saw his empire in ruins. His children were strangers, and the woman he underestimated stood in the light he believed was his. The price of power wasn't losing everything. It was realizing too late what it felt like to have nothing, and somewhere far from his sight. His children learned to laugh without him. If you liked it, please subscribe to the channel. Like this video and comment your thoughts.